السلام حياة قد جاء في القرآن أن السلام.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to another episode of iTREND on ITV. I'm your host, Zaheerah Bham Ismail. As we're getting into the holiday period, there's much of discussion around what we're doing with our kids, what are we doing as families, how are we going to make the most during this holiday period. And just before we started as well, we were discussing the fact that this November hasn't slowed down for any of us. Everybody's working at full steam ahead. And we decided to start this discussion with two fabulous people who are doing amazing work in terms of mediation, bringing insight and wisdom into balancing our lives into the community. I'd like to welcome Adila Botha and Ibrahim Patelia. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Thank you so much for making the time to be with us this morning. I know your schedules are really full. Before we get started, just tell us a little bit about yourselves, because this husband and wife team is quite a power couple, but you come from very diverse backgrounds and professions. So tell us a little bit about who you are.
Okay, so I'm a psychometrist. I specialize in psychological assessment. I've done that for many, many years. I'm also a counselor, and I volunteer at the Care Line. Ibrahim and I do a little bit of work together in terms of marriage counseling, and we've now put together what we call the cupcake sessions. So we try to have sessions on a monthly basis to inform the community.
We're going to chat a little, actually quite a bit about those sessions, because I've absolutely loved the topics that have come up all the time. Ibrahim, a little bit about yourself.
Well, I started off as a practicing lawyer, which I still continue, but became quite disillusioned because I saw that there was a loss of opportunity in resolving conflict properly. So I've practiced predominantly as an alternative dispute resolution practitioner, using mediation and arbitration to resolve conflict. Initially in labor predominantly, but I've moved into commercial and the family space.
That's the one thing that has been highlighted quite greatly about you, because whenever anybody has got issues, the first name that comes up is yours, and around mediation, because it's not just let's go to court, let's go and sort this out, let's just go and sue this one or that one. It's about mediation and working there. Why? I understand you said you got disillusioned and moved to mediation. Is this becoming a more common thing, or is this something that you found a niche market in that didn't allow for this space before?
Well, internationally, I think the system that has been brought in to resolve disputes, it's the court system. We can go back to colonialism, whatever it is, but effectively it's failing, whether you're in the UK, America, whatever it may be. And the reality is that there needs to be better ways to resolve conflict. Because if you've got a dispute at the moment and you want to refer the matter to the High Court, you may wait 2 to 3 years before it's resolved, and with hundreds of thousands of rands. So mediation provides the option for a quicker, hopefully cheaper process. But most importantly, why I find it I'm quite passionate about it, because it brings the people that are involved in the conflict back to taking responsibility for resolving the conflict without someone else telling them, you do this.
Yes, and it's not the bitterness that's involved, because this needs both parties buy-in. We've been seeing a lot of that when it comes to family issues, the need for mediation, which I think is something our generation has missed out on. We've seen our parents' generations always having somebody come into the family, helping sort out problems, and then we've become this generation where we sort things out ourselves. So I love the fact that this has become available to people. When you talk about having a family collaboration, this is a family collaboration. Tell us about the reason why you wanted to start up these cupcake sessions.
So we realized that even though we come from different professions, the idea is the same. So when we come home and talk about our work, sometimes Ibrahim would have an idea for me on how to fix it, how we can solve the problem or whatever it is. And then if he talks to me, then I come in with a soft skill perspective, if I can call it that. And then we realized, look, if we get together and we actually use our skills together, we can assist the community, we can have these sessions, and perhaps if we come from two different stances, because people are looking for both areas. When people phone, they say they need a legal perspective and they need a counselor's perspective. And so putting those two together would actually give us more benefit.
How long ago did the cupcake session start?
Well, at the cupcake sessions, I think the idea has sort of started maybe about 5, 6 years ago. I think we all have personal journeys, and I think it's something that we realize, whether with clients or ourselves, that when we're in difficulty, where do we go to? And I think the idea is that you start shopping around because someone went to a counselor or that mediator or the lawyer. And I always struggle with that. And I said, how do you bring multidisciplinary teams together and hopefully try and assist people really in need.
Yes.
And I think we offer this service, but I think the cupcake sessions started off, I think it's probably about 5 years ago, where I hosted the first big workshop to try and get diverse people to start just talking. And that proved to be quite valuable, because you have, whether it's ulama, lawyers, counselors, social workers, and when that collaboration starts happening, you start focusing on what you are most concerned about, is the interests of those people that are in need. Or else we sort of in our towers and we just don't assist people. And I think the reality is that there's still a very, there's a stigma perhaps, especially with counseling, the use of mediation. So the cupcake sessions recently has been simply there to create a very light, the word cupcake session as well, is to just sit around and chat through. And it's not really intense in terms of what we bring in as professionals, but it's to let people unpack and hopefully come up with ideas themselves that probably can assist with really practical things that we're all facing.
In terms of your choice of topics that you've been choosing for these sessions, they've been quite pertinent and things that we regularly need to be hearing more of, and having this access to this information. What I love about the fact is that you're centrally based, it's easy for people to access it. It's over a weekend, we on our downtime, and you can come as a couple, because usually I find many of the workshops either has the wife going, well, majority of the time has the wife going, and then going home to give the husband the information. Whereas this allows for both of them to come at the same time.
Yes.
Tell me how you've chosen your topic. Has it been based on problems that you're seeing in your practices?
Yeah, definitely. We're seeing a lot of marriage problems at the moment. People have issues with their marriages, but a lot of people are scared to talk about it. So they hide it, and then or sort of push it under the carpet, and then before they know it, they're tripping over the carpet because there's a big mound under this carpet. And that's when they seek help, when it's far gone, and there's a lot of work to do to actually get them back to where they started, or to a place of comfort. And so we've tried to come with very positive, initially the cupcake sessions were more positive, but then we realized people want to unpack. So we gave them that opportunity, and we chose those topics based on what we were hearing. And those seem to sort of be working a lot better.
Perfect. We've got to go for a quick ad break. When we come back, I want to talk to you a little bit more about unpacking these problems that we're seeing more of. Stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Assalamu alaikum. We apologize profusely for that little glitch, but while we've been off air, we've been having a fabulous chat here about the fact that none of our lives are perfect, especially when it comes to marriages, when it comes to parenting. We're all struggling along the way. And the fact that this sessions that you have compiled gives us safe spaces to be able to say, I'm actually struggling and I'm not managing. I'm sure you have a lot of people, like I'm thinking about myself personally, where I'd like to come in and be able to say, actually things are not as good as it looks. We're all struggling along the way. Do you often find that women and men need these spaces?
Yeah, I think both need the spaces, definitely. But what we're finding is women come more than men, and they want to come along to the sessions because they need to speak in a safe space, and they're scared that when they go home, their husband's going to say, why did you say that at the session? But the women are the ones that talk more, I find. They seem to be going through a harder time in the marriage because of the social norms, of the stigmas. They have to have perfect lives, as we said earlier, perfect homes. Everything has to be perfect. Even their food and their baking has to be perfect. And it's very difficult to be perfect.
And with this unnecessary stress that we put on ourselves to put out this idea of perfection on everything, it takes its toll eventually on our kids and on our families and things like that, which brings me to ask you about the session that you've got coming up this weekend, which is specifically focused on parenting. Tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, so this session, what we've done is we're talking about how to have a holiday with your children. We spent this whole year in a routine. Saturday and Sunday included. Our kids have soccer, they have cricket, then the soccer season's over and they want to do something else. The weekends are really difficult to actually just relax. And so what we're saying is when you get to this holiday, obviously all of us just want to tell our kids, go and sit in the cupboard while we exhale. But they also need time. They need emotional space. They need physical space. They need to be with us. They need to understand what a holiday is and how to have a holiday without us actually taking them on holiday, because not everybody can afford that. So how do we have a holiday with them and enjoy them and let them enjoy us? And we also have to think about we don't have domestic help. A lot of us don't have domestic help in the holidays, and that's a big thing for many people. But we have to use it to our advantage with our kids. Teach them values, teach them how to have a holiday without having somebody else to pick up behind you, clean up behind you. So that's what we aim to have on Saturday morning.
That's a fantastic thing. So if people want to get more involved and want to find out more about these workshops and want to come to find out how to be an active parent and how to be a present parent, how do they get in touch with you?
So they can get in touch with us on the website, which is www.mediateworks.co.za. And there's also a telephone number, which Ibrahim can give to us.
It's 087-1505-283.
Perfect. And we'll tag it on our social media profiles as well so that people have access to it. Ibrahim, in terms of, we were talking a little bit off air about the fact that, you know, many people are married for a long time, for many years. It's not just the new marriages where people, I think people have this misconception that you need counseling services or help in terms of problem solving, obviously before you get married and then early on in the marriage. But we're finding more and more that people who are married for 20 years, 25 years, need more help at that stage where they're also struggling. Do you find mediation plays a part at that point, or is it too far gone by then?
No, I think you're quite right. I think the timing of conflict, which is effectively just differences, they exist in all relationships. And you have to continuously manage them, whether it's with your kids, whether in a marriage, a commercial transaction, or whatever it may be. There's an integral human relationship that's there. And if it's not planned for, managed, maintained, and cared for, and also effective communication is quite critical. If there isn't that continuously, you're going to have problems. But obviously there are certain life changes that we all have, whether it's age, sickness, children's milestones, etc. And that often brings about stress in marriages at different points, even our own careers. And the strength of a relationship is often, or the weaknesses rather, is often shown when those changes happen. And naturally people have difficulties at a certain point not being able to manage those differences. So even with the holidays coming up, often the relationships or the lack of relationships or the quality of relationships sometimes gets exposed. And so I think, yes, people have stigmas that when we have a difficulty, it's a problem, and everyone will see it as a problem. The reality is absolutely natural. I mean, none of us, even if we had to sit here for a longer time, we'll find a point of difference. Myself and Adina would have many differences. It doesn't mean we're perfect because we try. The differences being managed effectively is what is more important, even with our kids. And it's that quality of relationship and communication.
You mentioned the holiday period often exposes this because we've got a lot more time with each other, we're not working, we've almost just slowed down, and then these things come up. What are the most effective ways of being able to manage it? I know you mentioned communication, but as Adila said, most of the time it's the women that want to speak and the men who decided actually my time out is not speaking.
I maybe outvoted you. But I think it's creating moments for that. So if we make it a task, it becomes quite difficult. So I know there's ideas of date nights, etc. And I think it certainly makes a lot of sense. But I've got this idea, and I've put it down for the holidays with kids, is let's take a walk. And why I use the analogy of a walk or a hike is because it takes away all our our comforts, if you want to call it. It places us in a natural environment. And even with our kids, and the ability to take a walk together is very symbolic. And the symbolism that we need to create is that we walk side by side. We have the opportunity to help each other. We appreciate the beauty and bounty of Allah. And we can do little things that are very simplistic. Now, it may sound insane, but I'm saying that's the first step. And this philosophy is not just from me. I think there's many dispute resolvers all over the world that look at the walk as an analogy. And so for me, in our relationships, it's going back to the very basic. So if we were courting or we just met each other, there would have been lots of walks where we were side by side and not opposed and not showing a lack of interest or so consumed. And I want to use that analogy to try and break or create the opportunity rather, for us to take steps forward.
That's amazing, because that concept works for me. Like, I'm thinking about my own children and being able to just take this walk without technological devices, without sharing the time, and just chatting to each other, letting them know that you're there. Do you find that with our kids, especially with this holiday period coming up, what are the things that we should be highlighting with them? What are the things that, because as much as we think, oh, it's a long holiday period, that time flies by so quickly, but to be able to make the most of that time with them?
Yeah, so the best thing to do is to ask them what they want to do during the holidays. Well, a lot of them want to go to Disneyland.
Yes.
But we can't exactly all do that. But they need to tell us what they want to do, because this is their time as much as it is ours. And if we draw up a list, just to become more practical, draw up a list of the wants, or the what do we really want to do. And then we need to break that list down into what is possible.
Yes.
And then probably put that onto a calendar and say, let's try to do these things. So as a parent, we need to, it's like punishment. We need to follow through, because that is the way to build trust with a child. That if there is follow through, we say to the child, yes, you can do this. Tomorrow we will bake together. Follow through, and the child will then start trusting. So that actually will build the relationship between the parent and the child. But it's not just the baking. They need to learn to clean up afterwards as well. Those are skills that we need to impart onto them, and responsibilities as well. So and like Ibrahim said, it doesn't need to be expensive. The simple things are the things that they remember more.
Yes.
Going to feed the ducks, riding your bicycle in the park, that kind of thing. They will always talk about that. They'll say, do you remember the day we went to ride our bikes and all of us rode and I fell, or something like that?
Yes.
That memory stays with them.
You're absolutely right, because kids seldom say, oh, I remember when we went to buy this. They remember exactly that, the walks or the feeding of the ducks.
Yes.
But I absolutely love your idea about saying make those lists and follow through on those lists, because that's so much for us as well, and our kids that can benefit from that.
Yes.
It's fantastic. Any last words? I know, unfortunately, we have run short on time, and I feel like we need an entire session on this, which we will get you back next year to ask you how we can cope with our kids for the year ahead, and we promise we'll get them back to find out those ideas. Any last advice to parents in terms of what to look forward to or what to do during this holiday period?
Yeah, so give yourself time. Be kind to yourself, because you also need it. As a parent, you've had a year. Take the time off. Give your children time and explain to them what is important. Explain to them that you also need the time. So if you give them time and you take time for yourself, they will understand it. As long as you're honest with them and you explain the reasons why. And enjoy it. Switch your phones off. Switch off a little bit.
Switch off.
Just to feel the break.
I'm going to hold you
That's
to
important.
that.
Make sure she does that. Ibrahim, from your part.
Just try and listen more. There's so much happening in our relationships that we're not seeing. I talk about the surrogate parent, which is throughout the year. So we need to listen and observe. And we know, interestingly enough, we communicate the most, 60 to 70% with our body language, and then with the tone, and then only we start hearing what people are saying. So even with our kids, it's those moments that are going to tell us a lot more about our kids, and vice versa. So when we talk about active listening, I think whatever you're doing, just put yourself in a conscious space to listen, whether you're parents, husband and wife, and for us as parents towards our kids. It's amazing what we're going to figure out. And when they start feeling appreciated and that you've listened to them, not without necessarily taking their demands, but listening to them, maybe there's an opportunity, and we're hoping that you'll start improving your relationship with your kids one more step forward. And that's all what we're seeking, is that we take one step forward, inshallah, over the holidays with our kids, and vice versa, so that we go into the new year with hopefully an improved relationship. And for me, that's why it's very, very important. I've started this hashtag, our relationships matter. And it's important to realize that there's 16 days of activism now about abuse of women and children. But we must recognize that, for me, the solution is in making our relationships matter, and all of them. So inshallah, let's try and prioritize that in some way. And let's see how we move into the new year.
Fantastic.
We've got a lot of work to do as well.
I think we all do. That's the beauty of it. And then we can help each other along the way. Jazakallah so much for joining us in studio. We definitely will have you back. It's been a wealth of information, both on air and off air. I've truly enjoyed it. Jazakallah.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
I think the hashtag our relationships matter is something that we need to be very conscious of and take cognizance of, because it's not just about who we are in our own personal capacities, but who we are to our communities, to our families, to our spouses, and especially to our children. And Ibrahim and Adila have given us fantastic ideas on how to be conscious parents and active parents during this December period. Let's just switch off. Let's enjoy the moments. I will tag them on my social media profile so you can get in touch with them to find out more about these causes and the workshops that they have. They're absolutely fabulous. I advise everyone to take that time out and just to go and learn, because it's only through those learning processes that we are able to better ourselves. Stay tuned. When we come back after our ad break, we talk more about holiday planning. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back after that ad break with lots of insight and wisdom in terms of being parents, perfect, not perfect, active parents and present parents. We're now moving on to chatting to the very dynamic Anisa Suleiman and talking about what are the trending holiday destinations during December. Many of us are planning very delayed, like myself, about where to go and what to do, and Anisa's here to share her wealth of wisdom with us. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the studio.
Wa alaikum salam. I'm glad to be here. I'm so excited.
It's such a pleasure to have you on. I know that it's been a hectic year for you. I've been watching you over social media and seeing what you've been up to. Alhamdulillah. But you always have success in all your endeavors. Anisa, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, so that our viewers know why you're sitting on our chair today.
I'm 23 years old. I'm going to be 23 in December, so my birthday is coming up, so I'm quite excited. I'm studying to become an accountant. I'm doing part-time studies, and while I'm doing that, I'm learning the scope of becoming a travel agent, because I just got excited about it.
But that's quite diverse things. I mean, very diverse professions. Yes. What made you decide to delve into both?
Actually, I just decided I wanted to do part-time studying, and then I went to work for Royal Travel, and then when I was working there, I was at admin. And then my boss told me, well, do you want to become a travel agent? And I said, well, okay, cool, let's do it. Why not?
That's the lovely thing about being that young. We embrace it all.
As we can, yeah.
And how long have you been doing it for?
Oh, my word. About 1.5 years.
And still enjoying every moment.
I am. I mean, there are moments where you were like, oh my God, why am I doing this again? But it's really nice because you learn about so many different people, the culture, and you get a bigger perspective on life as well. Yeah.
When it comes to traveling, parents often get so stressed out. Yes. How am I going to travel with my children? It's just so much to put together. It's so much to get organized. And how difficult or how easy is it to be organized, to be able to plan a trip? And then we'll talk about the tips for planning.
Okay, cool. It is easy if you have a travel agent. Absolutely. That's what makes your life easier. I think when it comes to traveling with your kids, it's very important to know the type of kids you have, what they like doing, what you like doing, and try to get that together, incorporate it together. Because sometimes parents just want to chill out, and if you want to chill out, then you'd rather go to an island.
Yes.
So there's activities for the kids to do. So there's someone over watching your kids, and you don't really feel like, oh, I'm a mother as well, complete mother, on holiday.
You need a little bit of a break.
Exactly.
And in terms of the tips for being prepared, because I know very often we'll say, oh, you have to start well in advance, but sometimes people's lives are busy, and then we end up getting to November and realize, okay, I need to start putting plans into place. Whether it's local travel or international travel, what are your tips for parents just getting holiday ready?
First tip is your passport. I have so many people coming to the office and they want to book a holiday, but then they don't have their passports ready. You need to have 6 months validity on your passport, as in when you come back from your destination.
She's saying that, and that tip is really valid because I just realized my daughter's passport expires in 5 months. So I'm sorting it out, yes.
Yeah, you have to sort it out. And well, the good thing is with the passports now, you don't have to go to the Department of Home Affairs. I know Standard Bank and FNB, if I'm not mistaken, they do your passport renewal for you as well as your ID. So you don't have to go through that whole long wait at the Department of Home Affairs. Another tip is if you have kids, especially your underbridge certificate, if you're only traveling with one parent, you need to have a letter of affidavit to say, yes, I'm allowing my wife or my husband traveling with my child, and all the important information like the ID number, the passport number, have an affidavit signed by the police station, of course, and that you have to have. You have no idea how important it is, because once you get to immigration, they're going to tell you, sorry, you're not allowed, because we don't know that you have permission from your spouse or whatever to take your kids. Another tip would be, as parents, we take. Okay, my mom is watching. She's gonna kill me. Sorry, mom. As parents, you know, we tend to get worried about where our kids are traveling as well. So sometimes you allow your kids to go alone, or not alone with their friends and stuff like that. So another tip is do your research about the places you want to go. Sometimes you don't want to get a travel agent involved. That's fine, but just remember. Make sure you have Google, you know, and make that to use. Make sure the places that you're going is safe. And depending on the location, I always say I'd rather go with a hotel than a self-catering. Especially if it's, you know, someone that you're hiring off an online website. Because it can be quite dangerous, especially for...
And I think that's a very valid point, because there are many youngsters who watch our show who travel on their own as well. And I think that's an exceptionally valid point about making sure you're safe, knowing where you're going to, and the tip of actually not using self-catering but using a hotel rather than an apartment where no one will quite know where you are.
Exactly. It's crazy. I mean, there are certain destinations, like for me personally would be Thailand. I wouldn't necessarily go for a self-catering just because I don't know what the area is like, where it is exactly. You know, they'll tell you, oh yeah, you're like 500 meters from the beach, but you're not really 500 meters from the beach. And so that's why I prefer in certain destinations, definitely go for a hotel option. I know it's expensive, but rather be safe than sorry.
Absolutely, absolutely. In terms of being safe, I think we always in a mindset in South Africa with always being heightened awareness of our surroundings, of being around us, and then we go on holiday and we just, everything comes down, but we also forget. What are the things in terms of safety for travelers that you often recommend to travelers about making sure you have extra of your passport copies or things like that that we should be keeping?
Definitely. I would always say get an affidavit of your passport, just because it makes the process a lot easier, because sometimes depending the destination, it's a delay between embassies, if you could say. So between the South African embassy, or if you're stuck in, I don't know, Dubai, or there could be a delay. So always have an affidavit of and a copy of your passport. That is so important. I can't stress enough. Also, your medical insurance, your travel insurance. Always get travel insurance. You never know when you're going to get sick. And trust me, the last thing you need is to get sick in a country where you are spending in dollars or pounds or euros. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And so you rather spend that extra 400 or 500, depending where you're going. That would go according to your travel insurance. Rather spend it than going to, I don't know, the US, and then you're stuck because now you have to spend like $1,000 just for one thing.
Absolutely.
Travel insurance is definitely number one on my list.
So we need to remember that and make sure. I must be honest, I never actually realized about having the affidavit with the copy of our passports, because we often think, oh, but you know what, we'll have it with us. And we don't realize.
Yeah, exactly. And also before you travel, because a lot of clients forget where they leave their passports, just have it in a place where you don't always open the drawer, but it's always safe.
And you've got it.
And you've got it. Especially 3 weeks. Make sure you have your visas, you know. We often think a lot of countries, especially in Africa, don't require visas, and that is not true. When you go to Egypt, you need a visa. A lot of people don't know that. So yeah, just make sure you have all of that in place.
How easy, I know we have to go for an ad break, but very quickly, you touched on the visas. How easy or how difficult is that to get it sorted? Because very often people say, I'm only going to be booking about a week before I leave, and they may not have left enough time to have that sorted out.
Depending on the visa. So if you're going to countries like, I know Turkey does an e-visa, you get it in a minute if everything passes through. So you get an e-visa, it's an electronic visa online. If you're going to like those Schengen countries, like Europe and stuff, it's going to take a while. So I would suggest at least having like 2-3 weeks planning before you decide that.
Fantastic. We'll be taking a very quick ad break, and when we come back, we'll be continuing our conversation with Anisa about holiday spots that are trending for December. Stay tuned. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to the last segment of iTrend. It's ironic, or rather coincidental, that even the adverts are pointing towards holidays and travel agents while we're chatting and speaking about what our holiday destinations are. Anisa, you've given us a lot of tips about being prepared and making sure we're organized with our kids. What are the trending holiday destinations? We can start with either local or international for this December period.
Local. We can start with local. Local, I would say Durban will always be number one on everyone's list. Because as well as also the cheaper destination to go to, especially in South Africa. South Africa has gone crazy with their rates, especially in December period. It's almost like you're going international. So I would say Cape Town, but now with the recent water crisis, some people are skeptical, but some people are still going. Again, Cape Town is not a cheap destination as well. With Cape Town, I always suggest people again, because this is my personal thing, because I recently was supposed to go to Cape Town and I was delayed in my planning. Travel agent delayed.
Yes.
And
it happens to the best of us.
Tell me about it. And it was just so expensive. And we decided, no, we'd rather go in Feb when the prices are, you know, a bit less and, you know, everyone can afford it and we can actually have a really good time, because
yes,
you go to the destination, but at the same time, you also want to spend a bit and you want to actually enjoy your holiday. So Cape Town is another one. Kruger National Park is really nice. It's nice if you're young, you know, you're a student and stuff like that there, and go on a camping thing at Kruger National Park. It's so nice. It goes for a really quite reasonable price as well, because you're going to drive down, so it's just petrol and split it amongst your friends, and it's perfect. Another thing.
I think, sorry, I just have to get back to that. You mentioned now about the fact that, you know, we need to take into account how much holidays cost. And I think you made a very valid point, because it's not just the paying for the hotel or the flights or the petrol, but it's what you're going to be spending there. And like you said, December, everything increases tremendously all over.
It does. It's actually crazy, because at the same time, yes, you go on holiday, but you're actually going to be living similarly to what you're living here.
That's
back in your home. So you have to take into account of that, because especially if you have kids and they love, you know, they see these things on the street and then they want it, and then you don't want to say no at the same time, but you want to say yes, and you know, you have to like plan your budget. Budgeting is very important.
What about for those of us that are not leaving for anywhere? Can we still make a holiday and make the most of being in Johannesburg?
Yes, you can actually, because a lot of restaurants open up. I love food.
Yes.
So a lot of restaurants have opened up. You have a lot of hiking trails as well that you can take your family to. The Harter Piersport is one of like the most famous one that people love. Magaliesburg, that side. Rustenburg, Sun City is also, you know,
there's a lot of options close by to home as well.
Definitely.
So whether we're staying or whether we're traveling, there's enough options to be able to do things.
Exactly, definitely.
Tell us about international trips.
Oh, international trips. The recent trending ones now that we see is Turkey, because it's quite reasonable to stay there. It's really cold this time around. I've been there, you know, during December, and it's freezing, but it's so beautiful. And in terms of living there, it's not as expensive as South Africa. I would compare it to, it's the same price for me personally. That's how we found it. Turkey is definitely one that's trending. Thailand, because of it's quite reasonably priced as well. Because I think nowadays, especially with the way the economy is going, everyone is just so concentrating on the budget-wise.
Yes.
So based on trends will be the budget.
Yes.
So Thailand definitely is number one, and Turkey. Those are the two trending ones right now.
But in terms of Turkey, it's not just a holiday destination where you're going to go and just relax with your kids, because there's a lot of touring, there's a lot of history involved in it. What are those, would that be suitable for families as well?
Definitely, definitely. Your kids can learn so much from it. They have the museum, which is called the Topkapi.
Yes.
I stand to be corrected.
Yes, you're correct.
Topkapi Museum, and the Suleymaniye Mosque and everything. So it's a really beautiful place, and it's so safe. I mean, don't get me wrong, yes, there was, you know, a few attacks.
Yes.
But when we went, it was relatively safe, and you don't, because, you know, as being South Africans, you're like, oh my God, you know, my purse and everything. And when you're there, it's just so chilled. Everyone's like, why are you stressing? I'm like, I'm from South Africa. That is why I'm stressing. But yeah, no, I think it's very important on holidays, trending or not trending, just to know, again, would your kids get bored after an hour? Because some kids are like, no, I want to do an activity after an hour.
Yes.
So maybe Turkey in the summer for the kids is really nice. So that would be our winter, their summer.
Yes. And and like you said, it's very cold at this time of the year. So if your family doesn't mind a very cold holiday, that's where you can head off to.
Yeah.
You mentioned Thailand also because of budgets, and in terms of the fact that it's an easy enough holiday. How are those holidays comparing to traveling locally? Because as you mentioned earlier, many people are also complaining that in South Africa, you can't even just get a reasonably priced December holiday period, that sometimes traveling overseas ends up working out the same price.
It is. With Thailand, what we found is if you put an extra 3,000-4,000, you can actually get a holiday in Thailand compared to South Africa. But then depending in South Africa, if you decide to go to a lodge in South Africa, I know there's an Mbiti lodge, which is absolutely beautiful. It's in Ladysmith, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's really, really nice, but it's so expensive. And when you work it out, I'm like, well, just go overseas then.
In terms of your favorite destinations and your favorite places that should be highlights for us to be visiting at some point.
Oh, wow. Maldives is definitely on my list. It's everyone says it's so beautiful, that it's just so relaxing. There's nothing to do there besides water activities, but it's just so clean. And so definitely Maldives is on my list. Another highlighting point for me, which was Istanbul, which was definitely absolutely amazing. I would recommend everyone going there. It's Turkey, just do it. Do Istanbul, do Cappadocia, do Antalya. that's definitely the highlights of my, my bucket list.
So in the Turkey area, when you mentioned that, you mentioned those 3 places, and obviously all are exceptionally different from the other.
Definitely, yes. It's completely different. Once you get in Istanbul, well, even in Istanbul in itself, it's like 2 separate places. Like your old city, new city, and it's also a different environment. Whereas Cappadocia, you're living on the top of like this, I would say, mountain type of thing, where there's like caves, like cave hotels that are built in. Absolutely stunning.
And that's where we see a lot of the hot air ballooning as well.
Yes, that's where it is, yeah.
And then Antalya, on the other hand, has got a completely
different
downtime.
Vibe. Yes,
completely
golf resorts usually. Like people that love golfing go there because a lot of resorts are there. You get the Max Royale Hotel, Golf Resort Hotel. So yeah, it's definitely completely different. That's why I love them.
I love that. And I think the Islamic history is so rich in Turkey that there's so much to learn from it at the same time.
Definitely. When we went, we did a tour, and it was crazy how much of Islamic history was there. I knew it was there, but for someone to shed light on it and to see you get like the swords you see the clothing and stuff, it was absolutely crazy. It was mind-blowing, and I loved it. Definitely an experience.
Perfect. Before we start wrapping up, there's 2 more questions I have.
Sure.
When you're traveling, we spoke very briefly about safety and making sure we're safe. One of the things that causes great anxiety is knowing, it's taxi drivers, knowing when to tip, how to tip, and also when you're doing tours like this, do we get a tour guide? Do we just find things out for ourselves? What is your advice and last minute advice for traveling hacks?
Sure. I think with regards to tour guides and stuff that you mentioned, I would suggest getting it from South Africa. Just because with the travel agents, they'll make sure that you get someone that speaks your language fluently, because sometimes it's hard with the language barrier. Also, it's quite reasonable to get it from South Africa than going there and buying your tour guide. Quick tips, I would say that if you guys want to travel, let's say if you're doing Morocco, do Malaga, because you can take I think it's about 2 hours or so flight there. So don't just stick to one destination. If you can, stick to 2 destinations. If you're doing the UK, do Paris with it. If you're doing Turkey, do Greece with it. And, just have fun with it, because if you're right there, you might as well just go.
Yes, and make the most
of it, because you don't know when you're going to go again.
Fantastic. It's been so wonderful to
Likewise,
chat to you, and we can't wait to hear more of your tips and tricks for holidays.
Definitely.
That was Anisa Suleiman telling us about what's trending this holiday period, both locally and internationally, and giving us many of her tips and tricks that will get us through this holiday period with some sort of sanity at the end of it all. Stay tuned. Actually, no, this is the end of our show. We'll see you next week for our last live recording. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Oh